imagine sitting across from a member of the German secret state police and negotiating with him to allow for the release of a few Jewish youngsters and for the establishment of a Jewish school. How would you feel when boarding a bus with dozens of children to be smuggled from your town and saved, while your father places his hands on your head and recites the Birkat Kohanim, priestly blessing, before you part? There may be some people in your community who feel envious each time they hear someone speak about his relatives, simply for the fact that those relatives exist. Is it worth the risk to kneel at the feet of a Nazi officer and plead for him to let a parent go from the line of people spotted just a few feet away? What can a teenager do when forced to march past the gallows and see how two of his campmates were hung? These are just some of the very real experiences that the survivors featured in Marking Humanity describe. The book includes 70 photos, bios, and writings of 46 Holocaust survivors from 6 countries: Canada, the United States, Israel, Australia, England, and Germany. I felt guided to create this book, and the more I got into the process, the more I became possessed with various emotions and reflections that left me determined to get it out into the world and help spread the various lessons that it holds. This became not only a literary project to educate and inspire, but also a tool to motivate societies to partake in changes for a better tomorrow. George had changed his last name from Spiegel during the Holocaust to avoid prejudice. Born in Hungary in 1930, he was merely a teenager when he ended up at the Starbauer concentration camp and was later transported to the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp in Poland. Although he survived, he lost 5 of his mother's 6 sisters and all of their children and husbands, as well as his grandparents, who had raised him since his father died when he was only a year old. When I met George, he was 78 years old, but his spirit was very much still jiving. I was inspired by his zest for life and his positive energy. It was so contagious. And he sometimes mentioned how happy he was and that he still believed in God. He inspired me, especially after all that he had been through.
I believe in God, and I do say my Shema, and the first words we say, most of us in our hearts and perhaps actually in Hebrew, Lo Hafta Adonai Elohecha B'chol Levacha, V'chol Nafshecha, V'chol Nodacha. It seems that God wants our heart, first of all, and we have to speak about our heart to our children. Not our skills, not our money, not our astounding accomplishments and abilities, but our heart. And everything begins there, and it is hugely pleasurable and a great honor for me to stand here and acknowledge being alive, acknowledge being the father to 3 amazing good kids. What was it like for a child in our concentration camps? Remembering the Holocaust once more. Hunger hearsed before it numbs. Terrified, truncated, stunned. That's how I felt, and those few of us who were still around. Brutes and brutalized, blended into one. It's difficult to know Musselman's credo. Primo Levi's commands are hard to understand. Desperation's stance, evil's arrogance, wrong's consequence, man's resilience, outdistance comments. Grief and regrets too are private treasures, treasures that endlessly measure. Speaking through a million voices, did I hope someone will hear?
Simcha was born in Ottawa, Poland in 1921. During World War II, He fled from his home with 2 friends when German planes invaded his hometown in September 1939. He lived in the Soviet Union and then briefly returned to Poland after the war. In 1949, Simcha immigrated to Canada with his wife. Over the years, Simcha wrote over 15 books in Yiddish, English, Hebrew, and Polish, including his memoir, Stepchild on the Vistula.
Now, what happened to my family? My father, mother, 3 younger sisters, and a little brother. They remained. They didn't leave. It was hard. It was the fall. It was hard to move with children. And they were alive in the ghetto till the liquidation of the ghetto on August the 19th, 1942, when 8,000 Jews from Otwock were taken to Treblinka. A few thousand that hid themselves were executed on the spot. Now I'm really glad and proud that I was able to write, among other, I wrote several books of poetry.
On the ground in a wire enclosure guarded by their own Jewish policemen, mothers and children sat squeezed together, fathers and sons, young and old. Some cried to heaven, even deplored the Almighty, who has no pity on infants and youths. Lovely daughters, others sang pensive Yiddish songs, Yom Kippur prayers, chapters of Psalms, recalled aloud their former good deeds, or regretted their lifelong thrift to save for a rainy day somewhere in the future. The children beside them sat silent and humble, crying no more for food or drink. Twice a week, early in the morning, 10 German gendarmes arrived. With them were Polish policemen, and behind, the Judenrat's guardsmen with caps and armbands, truncheons in hands. One by one, the Germans entered the fenced area of the doomed Jews, demanding jewelry, money, gold. Men and women knelt in front of them, as if before an ancient monstrous god. They handed over hidden possessions, wedding rings, watches, earrings, money, imploring mercy for their offspring, the fruit of their loins and wombs. A team of grave diggers arrived, Jewish inmates from the camp in nearby Kartzel. Hurriedly they were told to dig a deep, wide pit with a heaped up sand hill. Now the gendarmes began to drive the first 10 Jews from the enclosure. Some hurried through the short distance, some held tightly each other's hands. Others walked slowly, silent, proud, or cursed aloud the murderous race. Now, at the sand hill, they were forced to lie face down upon the clear sand.
The next survivor I would like to introduce is Helen Drazek. Helen Drazek was born in the Warsaw Ghetto in Poland in 1941. She and her parents succeeded in escaping from the ghetto to the Aryan side of Warsaw, and good friends, an aristocratic Christian family, provided them with false identity documents and safe shelter in their estates. The two families have maintained contact for over 60 years, and the rescuers were honored by Israel's Holocaust Museum, Yad Vashem, with the designation of Righteous Among the Nations. The Drazeks immigrated to Canada in 1952, and they lived in Montreal. Helen married a Holocaust survivor from Belgium named Philip, and they now reside in Toronto near their 2 married children.
My parents' horrendous escape from the Warsaw Ghetto took place only weeks prior to the valiant Jewish uprising of April 1943. After my parents' escape to the Aryan side, our rescuers placed them as caretakers in their villas. My father was to feign being deaf and mute in order to avoid revealing his Yiddish-inflected Polish. My parents were advised to attend church and to try blending inconspicuously into their new surroundings. Nevertheless, they were recognized, blackmailed, and denounced by Nazi collaborators. However, through the intervention of our protectors, the extortionists were eliminated. As for me, I was sheltered, along with several Polish orphans, in one of our rescuers' estates. Eugenics. Under Nazism, eugenics became a national policy. This was a twisted science in which certain criteria were established to determine who was a pure Aryan. This racial theory was taught in universities throughout Germany. Eugenics ultimately led to the systematic murder of thousands of people who were mentally or physically handicapped. One day, a team of German physicians suddenly appeared at the estate where I was sheltered. Someone had denounced our rescuers for harboring a Jewish child, so the doctors had come to verify the children's identity documents and to ascertain that they were pure Aryans in accordance with Nazi eugenics theory. Our rescuers welcomed the medical team to a sumptuous dinner of rare delicacies, fine wines, and lots of vodka. The physicians became friendly and jovial and were in good spirits when they entered the children's quarters. All the children were examined. The doctors were looking for various traits that would prove that they were Aryan. This included skull formation and size, eye color, and facial features such as size of nose and shape of ears. The male orphans were checked for evidence of circumcision. Fortunately, all the children, myself included, were declared to be pure Aryans. Our rescuers gave my parents advice to help them survive. Keep busy. Do not stay long in one place. Speak in a forceful voice and confident manner. Do not look sad. Never show fear. In an unfortunate twist of fate, during the Polish uprising of 1944, our rescuers were arrested as members of the Polish resistance and sent to a concentration camp in Germany, where they were subjected to forced labor, torture, and starvation. They remained interned until liberation. The title of the poem is The Screams of Silence. A silent scream resounds within our hearts, echoing of a time bereft of voice, an age of evil and of death now still, mute of all sound and barren of all noise. The horror that befell us swiftly came, supreme sacrilege, gruesome, heinous crime, obscene depravity, despicable and vile, darkest infamy committed in all time. The nightmares of those years engulf our minds. The memories of that hell remain intact. Sordid images of terror, pain, and blood, every breath drawn, a death-defying act. A silent scream stifles our words and thoughts, recoiled in shock, numbed beyond shout or cry, locked in our grief, imprisoned in our hearts, tormenting us until the day we die.